In the typical entrepreneur's career, there are 8 moments in your career that are like sliding doors moment, where it could be the difference between mediocrity and massive success.
Microphone check, 1, 2, what is this?
You're now listening to a brand new episode of the Play Big Faster podcast.
Look what you done started. Let's go.
Welcome to another episode of the Play Big Faster podcast. We're joined today by Robin Waite. Robin is a business enthusiast. He is the editor of Fearless Business, also a regular speaker, and also an entrepreneur and author. Thank you so much for joining us.
It's a pleasure, Sherry. Honestly, I'm so stoked to be here and to get the opportunity to chat with you and hopefully deliver 1 or 2 insights for your audience.
Oh, definitely. Now, I want to just jump right in. Fearless business is almost like an oxymoron because anyone who's been in business, they know there are times when it is more than a daunting task. So tell us how you came up with the name and the concept.
Yeah, so I was delivering a talk actually in front of about 150 people locally. This was 2017, 2018. And somebody said, what does it take to make a great business owner? How do they achieve their dreams? And I said, well, business owners need to fear the things in business ever so slightly less that stop them from achieving their goals. And I had a very good friend of mine in the audience, Adam. He stood up, and this is in the middle of my talk and in front of 150 people. And he pointed at me and went, Robin Waite, the fearless business coach. And then, of course, it just stuck. But it has become a really great mantra. I think there are a lot of business owners out there that I see doing, well, kind of the opposite of fearless. They're actually just being plain reckless with their money or with the investments which they're making, or just trying to, scale their business far too fast. And I know this is about growing your business faster in terms of the podcast, but I'm a firm believer in just sometimes it's the little adjustments which we make, the things which we fear. Like it could be as simple as doing a 60-second pitch, or standing up in front of a room full of 150 people, or maybe just as simple as increasing your prices so that you can make a bit more profit and bring some more cash into the business, that a lot of people get very stuck with. So my job is just to pinpoint those little things, course correct. And generally speaking, once the clients had the insight, my job is just to give them a little gentle shove, and then off they go, and they do the thing that we've agreed, hopefully.
Well, Robin, look, don't let the name fool you. I mean, we are the Play Big Faster podcast, but anyone who listens to the show on a regular basis, they know that we are all about baby steps and those, getting that foundation together so that you can actually grow and scale your business. Because, some business owners don't know how to distinguish between growing and scaling and what it takes to do that. So you have actually been a business coach and been in business for over 20 years.
Yeah, that's it. I started out many years ago, just in 2004, running a modest local marketing agency where primarily we did web design and branding. And, I remember my first year, I think between me and my business partner, we did something like £16,000 in revenue. And I couldn't have been more stoked. I was sort of fresh out of university, living the dream. I had all the freedom I wanted. I remember like that summer driving around in my car with the sunroof open, the windows down, listening to music. Oh, I'm a business owner. This is great. And of course, over the course of the following 12 years, we had all sorts of ups and downs, made pretty much every mistake that I think you can make under the sun when it comes to running a business and trying to grow it. But by the time 2016 rolled round, I had my business partner had exited the agency at that point, and had a small team of 4 people. And I think we had about 180 clients. We did somewhere close to about £235,000 in revenue, so $300,000 revenue. And for a small local agency, it was great. But there reached a point, and I don't know, I know this is a short episode, so I won't give the full story, but essentially I'd reached a point where I'd just fallen out of love, and I was unfulfilled with this business I'd built. And I went down a hill at 52.5 miles an hour on my push bike, my buddies on a Sunday morning, and broke down at the bottom of the hill. I just broke down in floods of tears, and it all kind of came out. And I remember going home to my wife, and at this point, remember she's like 8 months pregnant. We were 3 weeks away from my second daughter, Sophie, arriving. And I said, hey, darling, I've finally made a decision. So there's some good news. I've decided what I'm going to do now, because she knew that I'd been unhappy for quite a long period of time. And then the bad news was basically I was going to close the agency down, on Monday morning. So she did the international sign of distress first and foremost. And then when we were able to sort of talk it through, and I was like, look, it's just not the late nights. I was highly stressed. We had so much sort of draw from our clients on my personal resources. And my team were just a little bit dysfunctional because I didn't know, I'd learned a lot in 12 years, but I certainly didn't know what I know now about sort of running and scaling a business. So the simplest thing was just to close it down. I was really fortunate that somebody came along. They heard I was closing and made me an offer to buy it. Not for a huge amount of money, but it was enough to kind of keep me in coffee and cake for a few months, and enjoy paternity leave with my new daughter and well, all of my family really for 3 months. And at that point, it was like, well, what do I do? And it's really hard. I think one of the hardest decision I made during that time came from like a lack of decision, complete indecision. I didn't know which direction I wanted to go. I started telling this story about the breakdown and the agency, and I told it. And for some reason, it just really gelled with people. And I had other agency owners coming to me, and there's a bit of a theme here, offering me coffee and cake for a chat so they could pick my brains about how to sell their agency. So I did this informal mentoring for a while. Just I didn't want the pressure of having running a business. I'd had a mental breakdown because of the first one. So why would I want to start another business up straight away? But eventually it got to a point where I was getting invited to do talks and podcast interviews, and I already had a book as well. And then that pivotal moment when my friends sort of said, hey, Robin, wait, you should, the fearless business coach, you should set up a coaching practice. But yeah, I've made so many mistakes, Shuri. So you can pick my brains and let's dive into some of them.
Well, and I think part of being an expert in your field is making those mistakes and recognizing how you can improve on those things to actually help other people. So you mentioned at this time you already had one book. What was that book about?
So the first book was called Online Business Startup, and it was very much aligned with the agency which I was building. So we were a web design agency primarily, and we did a bit of branding work and things like that. So the whole it was 3 parts. The idea was, starting up a business, taking it online, and then, the growth phase of it. So marketing it. I think it sold about 20,000 copies. It was a bestseller on Amazon for 2.5 years. So at the top of the startup and entrepreneurship category here in the UK. So that did really well. But I realized that book was kind of more aligned with my marketing agencies. So when I pivoted into coaching, there was a bit of a misalignment there. Interestingly, so a bit of a funny story. When I settled on business coaching and I was now doing more talks and presentations that were sort of aligned with that, I did a webinar, and the idea was that I would get a load of web designers onto this webinar, and then I would pitch them business coaching and grow their agency. And about 5 minutes after I'd finished, I got a phone call from this really excitable guy called Russ. And he was like bouncing off the walls. He was so full of ideas and energy off the back of the webinar, which was great. And so I said, oh, tell me about your web design business. He said, oh, I'm not a web designer, I'm a golf pro. And I was like, oh, how did you end up on a webinar? He said, oh, well, a friend said you were great. I wanted to jump on and just learn a bit. And I think you can help me. Anyway, Russ became my first official coaching client, so a golf professional. And then as it went on, I started to apply some of the principles I'd sort of learned during my agency days around productizing services and pricing to his business. And it worked. It's like, oh, wow, this is good. Was it just a fluke? It was my first client, so he started to apply it to a couple of other businesses. And again, I always tell the story about Russ as well and his golf pro, business. And people said, oh, you should write your next book should be about that. And it actually became Take Your Shot, which I think we may mention a bit later on. And it was just wonderful because there were things which aligned with me. So Russ had a young family. I had a young family. He was having challenges where he was charging time for money, for example. So, and at that time, cash was still, so he would drive like an hour to the pro shop in the cold, here in the UK, start doing his lessons, but partway through the day, especially in the UK, the weather's awful. So, he'd get, partway into his morning and then start getting cancellation notices from clients, through a text message if the weather was particularly bad. And he told me this story about this one particular day when, 7 out of his 8 clients cancelled. And so it ended up costing him money because he had to pay for the bay to deliver the lessons, plus his petrol to get there. So he lost money that day because clients were typically paying cash at the end of the lesson. And so I took him on this journey essentially of, well, actually, Russ, why don't you, rather than selling it lesson by lesson, why don't you focus on like why people are coming for lessons in the first place? And so for him, it was because, one of the people that stood out to him was this sales guy who'd just taken on a new role in this big 2,500 person business. And one of his first assignments was to go and play golf with the CEO of this company. And he hadn't played much golf. So Russ's job was basically to make him look really good on the first tee. So the CEO noticed him. It's like, wow, that's your value proposition. That's what you should start, build a program around that for your clients. So he packaged it up. And then he was able then to take that and he would take cash up front for that package as well. We then went through the gears with his pricing. So he was like £30 a lesson or something like that. And typically clients would have about 8 lessons. And so about £240. And he said, well, how much should I charge for this then? For that result? I said, well, I don't know, try £600 or something. I just plucked a number out of the air. And he went, okay. And off he went. And he just started selling these things like hotcakes. It flew. And so those principles, most business owners can learn something from that. Articulating your value based on the results and outcomes that clients want, as opposed to the thing which you do. It's not about the golf lessons or the standard HTML standards compliant websites that you buy. It's actually do those websites generate leads and inquiries for that business, and can they convert those into paying customers? When somebody plays for lessons, is it going to improve a specific part of their game, their short game, their long game, driving off the tee, whatever it might be? And most service client businesses that I've worked with now, it's about digging at finding that gold, that nugget of gold around their value proposition that makes the biggest difference.
In your business coaching business, do you deal more with service-based businesses or product-based? And have you found that it really makes a difference, or are the concepts universal?
The concepts generally are universal, but a personal choice. I don't tend to work with sort of physical product or bricks and mortar businesses necessarily, but service client businesses is my strength. So we work a lot with other coaches because they've seen my practice grow and sort of want to emulate it. So, which is a great compliment because they come in because they want to, do what I've done. About 40% of our clients are coaches. We've got a small portion of consultants who come in and want to escape that sort of day rate type trading for their time. And then the rest of my clients are typically sort of freelancers, creative agencies, or just creative, individuals. The common theme though is that they are very much, and again, this is most successful business owners will have experienced this, it will resonate. Very smart people. They love doing what they get to do. They get amazing results for their clients, but they're typically sort of charging hourly rate time, exchanging time for money. And they get to the end of the month, scratching their head going, well, I'm really smart. Where's all the money? They don't feel very much compensated for the work they do.
And that was my next question, is when do you know that you actually need a business coach? So if you're one of those people and you're scratching your head at the end of the month, you may need a business coach.
Well, this is the thing. I think if you think you don't need a business coach, you probably do, and almost I encourage people from day one, you might not be able to afford a business coach. So good business coaches aren't necessarily cheap. However, you can find business coaches in a podcast like this, for example. So find podcasts where there are guest experts on there regularly that you kind of vibe with and you can learn something from. There's lots of, in the UK, we have things called growth hubs, which are government funded projects where business startups can go in and get free advice from experts. Reading books and listening to audiobooks is one of the best forms of coaching that you can possibly get. So you don't have to pay for coaching. And I always tell people that, literally start your business, start learning, and that getting as much information as you possibly can do. But generally speaking, when it starts to come into more of mindset issues where people are getting really stuck, frustrated with their business, where they just feel like they're just stuck and not making any further progress, that's when a business coach or mentor really comes into their own. Because with 20 years experience, most of the times I can have a very short conversation with somebody and see, generally speaking, where their biggest bottleneck is, and be able to start to divert their, show them different ways of working, show them different ways of seeing the problems which they're experiencing. And sometimes as well, I dip out of coaching and asking questions, and I'm just go and do this, and it generally tends to work and kind of shortcut the process a little bit. But more importantly, coaching is about empowering people to be able to make decisions themselves that are going to, to see problems in their business, make decisions themselves and feel empowered to do that they know then are going to, dial the needle in terms of where they're heading.
So I guess my question also is coaching a one size fits all and the relationship with you and your coach? I know that some people offer coaching for a period of months, maybe for quarters or a year, but it sounds like a successful business owner would consider a coach as an ongoing relationship. Is that kind of what you do with your
Yeah,
program?
kind of. I mean, again, like I try and empower clients to get to a point whereby they don't necessarily need my help anymore. We're Fearless Business, we actually do something which is quite different to a lot of coaching practice. We actually offer lifetime access to our resources. So we do like a weekly call structure. We have an online portal. We've got a lot of the usual stuff. But I've noticed that most clients, when they work with us, typically will get, it's like a bell curve. The average client will get their result within about 3 to 6 months. But then after that, they just need to come back, like consolidate a bit, come back, ask a few more questions. They just need a bit of course correction. So we make the bulk of the sort of tweaks and changes very early on in the process. And the reason I went down that route specifically is because and there's nothing wrong with them. It's always down to like personal choice, what works for you. So one, I think you do have to vibe with your coach. You have to have like similar identity, similar values, similar mission and vision, which you're kind of going on, that they also understand and have some experience in. But I've been a member of these sort of 12-week accelerators and 6-month accelerators and things like that. And my experience of it, this might not be the same for everybody, was you kind of get to like weeks 10, 11 out of a 12-week program. And then you're like, feels like your right arm's about to be sliced off because you're going to lose access to these resources, or you've got to pay another chunk of money to like stick around for longer, irrespective of whether you've got the result or not. So hence and also I tried the 12-week thing as well when I first started out. And it just felt like we had this revolving door of people, business owners coming in and out all of the time. There was a lot of churn. And it didn't matter whether we got the result or not, people were still coming and going. And I found it really frustrating. Our clients found it frustrating. So, and one of my values that's always been like, I love people. I love the sense of community and business owners, it not just being about Robin or Fearless Business, but the community that you build can then all support one another and create this mastermind effect. And let's bring in other experts that can all help, solve meaningful problems. So we went lifetime, and just the community aspect of what we've created, because people can't get rid of us now. They have to stay around because it's lifetime access, right? So we've got this wonderful community now. We're up to, since we launched that lifetime access, which is about, I'm trying to think now, 2022 at the start of it, we've now got 175 members who've kind of been all the way through the program, graduated. Now they're kind of alumni members of the community. And we see those longer standing community members now starting to lean in and almost mentor and help the people who are just sort of joining the program, which is really lovely to see. But yeah, it's got to be all about community. Some people, though, as well, it has to be said, they prefer a much more personalized, intimate sort of relationship with their coach. So I'm not, and again, I don't think there's any one size fits all approach. Sometimes people would rather not share everything out in a group format. So one-to-one, for if you're that sort of person, one-to-one coaching is really great. The only as a downside to like one-to-one, as I see it, is that it's very niched, because if that coach only has experience in one certain area, you will reach a limitation as to their abilities to be able to help. Whereas the benefit of like me running a group program, for example, or group coaching, is that generally we bring in associate coaches like a lot of other group programs do. So again, you get the benefit of various different areas of expertise. So I'm like the business, tactical, practical guy. One of my associate coaches is a mindset coach. He's a certified hypnotherapist. So he's great on like helping people with any mindset sort of related issues where they're getting really stuck, limiting beliefs and those sorts of things. We've also got a pure coach in the group as well. She's just great with like motivation. So if people have just had a dip in motivation and just really like, there's a lot of inertia, she's just fantastic at like unlocking their energy and just getting them back out there and fired up and ready to go. So we've got different people to help with different things as well.
And that sounds awesome. Now, for someone who has, never had any sort of coach, you now are on book number 3, I believe, correct?
Yeah, well, actually, I've got 5 books, so
Oh,
yeah.
5. Okay, I missed 2. Help us out. Tell us what they are.
So we've got Online Business Startup. We've got Take Your Shot, which is probably the one I'm best known for. That was about Russ the Golf Pro. We've got Marketing Machine, which is my take on marketing. It's a bit of an agglomeration of different ideas. So, we've got there's the Eugene Schwartz breakthrough advertising type copywriting side of it, and just a few other things. And I don't know, this is probably something for another podcast altogether, but I've came up with this concept of like, actually business owners need to be antisocial. Like social media has become so prevalent in 2025, right? That we think the way to grow a business is to go, like if we're starting up, is let's go straight to social media and start churning out content. And I've seen it break business owners, and there's far smarter ways to market. But like I said, there's a can of worms being opened up there. So, maybe that's a conversation for another time. My book writing process, I just packaged up into a little book called Kickstart. And then there was another one where I got some wonderful testimonials from clients not about fearless business, but I interviewed them around their experience of coaching. So I wanted to make it impartial, and I wanted, if somebody was interested in either becoming a coach or getting coached, it's a dozen stories from clients I've worked with about their coaching journey, and it's called Get Coached. So you can see I'm quite passionate about it. But yeah, and then the next book, the one you're referring to, which is a work in progress, is all about pricing. So my ideas about how you can build a business that has, or the dream business is one where you've got double the income or profit with half the clients.
Awesome. Now, I know that you mentioned also that there are several different ways to grow and scale your business, like, reading books and also doing podcasts and things like that. You have an experience where you were actually on a podcast and it really increased the number of leads. What are some suggestions or just some things you can share with our audience about how that worked for you and how they can do that in their business?
Yeah, so the podcast you're referring to is, I mean, maybe we can share a link because I think some people might be interested to see that as well. But it was with a guy called Ali Abdaal. So he's got 6 million subscribers. He's on YouTube. He's best known for talking about productivity. He's like a sickeningly smart guy. He's a certified doctor here in the UK. So he's did his medical studies for 7 years, leveraged YouTube to pay for his medical studies, and then eventually became a YouTuber and is now massively successful at that as well. Love the guy. He's brilliant. So anyway, I managed to get an appearance on his podcast. It's called Deep Dive, and which ended up ultimately resulting in 3,000 leads and approximately $300,000 worth of new business. And this was 18 months ago that it went live. And I've had leads dropping in just whilst we've been doing the recording now from that same podcast. So it's still working for me. But again, people always ask, how did you get that podcast rolling? How can we do it ourselves? And I think one of the challenges is that business owners, I was alluding to it about the marketing machine, people get really caught up in social media and building their website and, blogging and long form and short form content, and get on podcasts and just churning out as much content as they possibly can do. And I reached a point doing that where I was probably spending 30 plus hours a week, like just on content marketing on social towards the end of sort of 2022. And I was fed up with it. I was burnt out. And I was like, well, you can't just stop marketing. You got to do something, right? So I came up with this concept about partnerships, but not like referral partnerships or like you scratch my back, I'll scratch yours. It was just like, I realized that I'd spent a couple of years post lockdown like, hanging out in my little studio in the Cotswolds in the UK, not really seeing anybody apart from in 2D. And I was like, you need to get out, Robin, and meet some people, because that's like where business happens. So I wrote down a list, and this is where I'm going to give 5 steps basically. And hopefully people will grab a notepad and pen at this point and write these down. So I got hyper intentional around, and this is step number 1, be intentional. Write a list of 10 people that you would love to hang out with, that ideally have larger numbers of audience than you, rather than you trying to grow your own audience. Well, if they've already got 100,000 or 1 million subscribers, well, if there's a crossover, it's okay to leverage their audience, right? So I wrote down my list of 10 people. Ali Abdaal was on that list. There was Chris Doe, who's another YouTuber, Simon Squibb, who's an influencer here in the UK. So there's a list of 10 people. And then step number 2, I was like, well, you've got to be in the same room as these people, because how are they going to get to know you if you can't actually meet them, if you can't shake their hand, look into the whites of their eyes and tell them what an amazing job they're doing with their YouTube channel or with their book or with their talks that they're delivering. So I started going to their events, like just showing up, and also there's a caveat side note to this is like, don't just go to these events and sit in the back row and be a passenger, like sit in the front row, put yourself front and center so that when this person is talking or whatever, or when they finish their talk, you can walk up to them and have a selfie with them and congratulate them on their amazing talk and things like that. The third step around, so I just started going to events with these cool people that I just would like to hang out with, basically. The third step is be helpful and add value. There are too many people, and I think this is so prevalent with social media, there are too many people who are like, and I get it, we've got mortgages to pay, we've got to put food on the table for our children, but they're thinking too heavily about themselves and they want a quick buck, like they want it all now. And I realized that actually the most successful people have played the long game. It's like what Simon Sinek talks about, the infinite game. There's no short or long-term wins or losses in business. The goal is to stay in business for as long as you possibly can do. So I thought, I'm going to play that game. I'm just going to not expect anything in return. I'm going to show it to these people's events, and I'm just going to add as much value to their world as I possibly can do. So for some of these people, I was doing, offering free coaching sessions to their team. For some of them, I would if they had an event on, I would just send it out to my list, and promote their event for them when they hadn't asked me to. And one particular event, and this is where it started to come together with Ali Abdaal's team, there were 600 people at this event and they all looked lost. Like nobody knew where they were supposed to be going. So I put my coat and my bag down. I was like, right. I was guiding people when they walked. I was like, the loos are over there. The cafe's over there if you want a coffee, and the auditorium's this way. And Ali will be signing books over there. I was doing this for about 15 minutes. And then Ali's general manager walked up to me and he's like, Robin, what are you doing? And I was like, well, I'm just helping out. Everybody looked lost. So I thought and he said, well, you don't need to do that, Robin. You're like a guest here today. Like, go and enjoy yourself. I was like, no, I am enjoying myself. This is like, and he went to walk away. And then he took 3 steps and he turned around and he came back and he said, Robin, now I've got you. There's something I've been meaning to pick your brains about. You're the pricing guy. We've got this change we're making to one of Ali's products. Could I catch up with you afterwards? Could we have a group chat? And that's the start of it, right? So now I've been noticed by Ali's team. It's great. This is working. We're only on step 3, right? So step number 4 then, and this was part of it. I realized what happened in that moment is find your inside person, your inside man or woman. And generally because like Ali or Chris or Steve Bartlett or Richard Branson or whoever it is who's on your list, they're busy people. They're not going to reply to every message or email or anything like that. However, their team, they're there watching everybody swoon over their boss. When you show up and you say, oh, hey, how's it going? They're like, oh my God, somebody noticed me, right? So get to know their team. Again, keep adding value and things like that. So coaching all of Ali's team, and they're all a group of freelancers. They've got their own businesses. So it's nice and easy. Didn't charge them anything for it. Did it entirely for free. And what that led to, so now I know his team. Well, his team, when they want something or when Ali wants something, they'll ask the team. And if I know the team, then they might refer me. So I did this one coaching session with a guy called Joe on Ali's team. And Joe was like, I have to pay you, Robin. This is so insightful, so helpful. I was like, no, don't want any money. It wasn't part of the agreement. And he said, yeah, I've got to do something. And I was like, well, there is this one thing. And I found out that Ali was recording 2 seasons of his podcast back to back. So 24 guests in total over the space of 2 or 3 weeks before he was due to go traveling. And I said, look, don't put me forward because I know that all the spaces are taken, but put me on the bench. These guests are flying in from everywhere. If one of them can't make it, just get on the phone. I'll get on the train and I'll come fill in that recording slot so you don't lose it. Yeah, sure, Robin, no problem. And it turned out Joe was dating Ali's podcast booking coach. So he went home, had a chat with Amber, and I get a call that evening. Robin, actually, funny enough, somebody's bailed on Tuesday. Can you come in? It's like, yeah, no problem. I was like, put the phone down. Damn, I had 2 podcast interviews, a coaching client. I had to do school pickup and drop off that day. And, my wife's away working up in Birmingham. So I had all these logistics to do. Anyway, I went down and recorded, and the rest is history. That episode dropped, and originally we signed 15 copies of Take Your Shot, and we're going to give them away as like a prize at the end of the episode. They were gone in 5 minutes of the episode going live on YouTube, and then I was like, the inquiries just kept coming, so I just kept sending books out, and I think 30 days, 45 days in, I've sent 600 or 700 copies of the book, and I've got a little production line with my wife and my 2 girls, and like me signing books, one's sticking labels, one's putting them in the envelopes and stuff. It was great. And I think now 3,000 odd leads later, one of the other things which has become, and this is the final sort of step in it, and then I'll stop rattling on. The final step is something what I call the silver platter. So again, sometimes like you need something big to happen in order for people to really pay attention to you. And as I've started, and you have to bear in mind as well, Shuri, this is over probably the course of like 3, 4, 5 years that I've been nurturing all of these partnerships now. And slowly getting to know the team, slowly getting to know the influential person I would like to form this partnership with. And they know what the game is. Like, they know that eventually we'll do something, some kind of collaboration. Hopefully both of us will win from it. But there's this notion of this silver platter. If you really want to just speed things up a little bit, there's nothing better than giving somebody some money. So I sponsor events in order to open the door up, for example. So I'm not paying them directly, but what I'm doing is I'm supporting their brand, their business, their event by, just getting involved in it. And financially is sometimes the best way to do that. It could be that so there was another company that wanted me to speak. And I was like, I know you want me to speak, but this isn't my topic. Like, can I introduce you to somebody who could actually do a far better job? And I introduced them to the speaker. The speaker actually turned them down, believe it or not. But the guy who I introduced them to is very influential. So it's like, oh my God, Robin, I can't believe that you would put me forward for this talk. I'm so honored that you would do that. It wasn't my cup of tea either. I ended up doing it. I had to work quite hard for that. And another one is where, like, so now I've got all these influential people in my world, like bringing two of them together. So you imagine bringing Ali together, who's got 6 million subscribers, with Chris, who's got 2.5 million subscribers. Selfishly, I want to listen to that conversation, but equally, I know millions of people could benefit from it. So the silver platter is all about like doing something really selfless, just bringing people together, helping out. It's like uber helpful in that respect. And it's worked, not just with Ali. So like you could see that as a one-off. I've got my dream speaking gig this year as a result of using this 5-step process. I got to spend 3 hours on a yacht in Dubai a couple of weeks ago with Chris Do. You may or may not have heard of him, but he's 2.5 million subscribers. And you'd spend thousands of dollars to get time with Chris. But I spent £700, and I thought, if I put him on a boat, he can't get off. So he's gonna have to sit and talk to me, and it was great. His two sons came along. We had some other friends there as well. It's a good big piece of business networking. So there's all these great opportunities that, through selflessly not chasing the money and getting a quick buck and trying to just pay into these partnerships, that are just going to pay dividends over the next 5, 10 plus years now in my career. I wish I'd known it 20 years ago, because I think things might have been a bit different, but I know now, so that's the main thing.
So, Robin, you've given us such great information, but, just to kind of round it out, if you had one single piece of advice to share with entrepreneurs on how to play big faster in business, what would it be?
So it goes back to the fear the things in business ever so slightly less. I think, ask me even 5 years ago, would I have invited myself to be a guest on Deep Dive? Probably not. With Ali. Some of the other amazing people, I would have been a shrinking violet, stood at the back of the room going, oh, should I go and speak to them? And I think a lot of people have these things that they want to do, things that they want to achieve, and they just dither a little bit. Don't dither, just do it, because it could be the thing which changed your life. I heard a statistic the other day that there are in a typical entrepreneur's career, there are 8 moments in your career that are like sliding doors moment, where it could be the difference between mediocrity and massive success, like eight opportunities. So if you see them, just go for it, because whether you're starting out or a veteran like business owner, don't miss those opportunities, because you may not get that chance again.
And so for those people who want to continue this conversation or just get some of those books or resources from you, what is the best way to contact you?
Yeah, so it'd be really selfish, wouldn't it, if I said I gave away loads of books on Ali's podcast?
I
Do it on yours. So I've got a stack of like copies which I'd love to sign and send to wherever you are in the world. So the website to get those is fearless.biz/TYS. There's an option. I hate like free book plus shipping. There's an option if you want to contribute towards shipping, you can. But if you just want to pop your name and address in there, I'll literally send them anywhere. And hopefully we'll share a link to that as well. And the other place as well, I'm trying to grow my YouTube channel at the moment. Like, video is something I'm really passionate about. And I want business owners to have access to like good quality business advice. So we're growing that at the moment. I'd love for a few people just to jump onto my YouTube channel and offer a subscription, so they can get access to those videos.
Well, Robin, thank you so much for joining us. We will definitely put a link for your book and other resources with the show notes. And until next time, everyone, play big faster.
Thanks for listening to this episode, and remember to play big faster.